Dober dan sem skupaj na zaključnem srečanju letošnjega DigiMeeta. Potrebnih srečanj z raznolikimi gosti in vrhunskimi strokovnjaki se nam danes obeta en super pogovor. Danes se bo s predsednikom uprave Nove KBM Johnom Denhofom pogovarjal o digitalizaciji, trajnosti, pa tudi o kolesarstvu novinar Radia Slovenija in kolesarski župan Matej Praprotnik. Preden pa jim damo besedo, prosim našo direktorico Simono Kogovšek za en kratek uvodni pozdrav.
Hvala, Barbara. Lep pozdrav vsem skupaj in dobrodošli na zaključnem srečanju letošnjega DigiMeeta. Za nami so že 3 od 4 srečanj DigiMeeta, na katerih so številni gostje iz različnih področij, seveda skupaj z našimi strokovnjaki tudi, predstavili koristi, predvsem pa izkušnje z digitalizacijo poslovanja. Veseli me, da vse več podjetij sprejema digitalizacijo kot priložnost za rast, učinkovitejše poslovanje tako navznoter kot navzven, pa ne le to, digitalizacija prinaša tudi bolj trajnostno poslovanje z dolgoročnimi, seveda pozitivnimi posledicami. Ne želim biti predolga, zato se vam zahvaljujem za tako velik interes in obisk in vas prepuščam dobre roke 2 kolegov, ki jim digitalizacija, trajnost in sproščen pogovor sta vsekakor zelo blizu. Matej in John, beseda bo vajina. Naj pa predajam nazaj besedo Barbari in se vam zahvaljujem za ta kratek uvod. Hvala.
Hvala, Simona. Torej, Matej in John se boste danes pogovarjala v angleščini, kot smo napovedali, sem pa prepričana, da to v teh časih globalizacije ne bo noben problem. Vas pa vsekakor vabim, da že med samim srečanjem pisno pošiljate svoja vprašanja v razdelek questions, lahko v slovenščini, še lažje bo v angleščini, pa bomo potem na koncu zastavili vprašanja gostom. Matej and John, the spotlight is on you.
Well, thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Simona. Thank you, everybody, and good morning to you, Mr. John Denhof. Dobro jutro, actually.
Dobro jutro.
I know I will be asking most of the questions, but still I want the audience to be engaged as well. So please do ask questions. Everybody is kindly invited to use your questions, and to do so, please use the chat. Not only is that a great opportunity to ask John a question, but we will actually reward you for doing so. And I think we have 3 cycling shirts. Thank you, Barbara, for showing them. And they are signed by no other than Primož Roglič.
Oh.
And the only way you can get one is by asking questions, well, that is being engaged and involved and ask something. So, John, I see you're at the office. Whereas I'm working from home today. I have set up my studio because the last couple of years kind of made that possible. And I also think it's more sustainable, which is the first topic I wanted to address, sustainability. You know, years ago, sustainability was a term that referred to environmental sustainability, but then it kind of shifted into the language of business. So for you, John, what is sustainability? When you close your eyes and think about, what do you see?
Well, sure. First, let me say I'm very pleased and honored to be here. And I think it's a great way to have a fireside chat. I know we don't have a fire, but anyway, nice intimate chat about topical things, especially sustainability, is something I really like to do. So for me, well, yeah, sustainability, it's a used word. And typically people thought of it as nature. You know, you sustain the forest or you sustain the crops. Yes. When you think about business, for me, it's a lot about today finding a sustainable business model, which just means it's one that stands the test of time. So like you want to leave nature better than you found it, or why you want to protect nature, you have to do the same with your business model. And I don't think there's any business model with any client we deal with. And remember, we touch pretty much every sector and every retail client across the country one way or the other. These days, you need to have ESG in your business strategy and in your business model. And, you know, I think for me, it's also a lot about principles. So it's about how you want to do business. Typically, we talked a lot about returns, margins, RORAC, all the financial metrics, but now it's a lot more about, you know, how you're focusing on climate change or the E, but also the S and G are extremely important, especially a CEO. You have to make sure the governance and the culture is conducive to the kind of corporate culture you want. So we talk more and more about meritocracy, diversity, and really the kind of place you want to wake up and be motivated to work at. And this is the kind of transformational project I really like, is bringing this in. You know, the story of NKBM has been anyway for the last 5 years about transformation, about many things, our business model, about our relationship transforming with regulators, about building better products. But now ESG is increasingly on my agenda. And I would tell you it's probably now about 60% of my time. And I think in the next 5 years, it's going to be even more.
Yeah. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about the ESG, environmental, social, and governance. What it means depends largely on the context, but I assume it can also call it a management philosophy, something that Nove KBM has incorporated into their strategy. Correct?
True. It has to.
Yeah. So I speak to a lot of people, John. So this is sort of my job, and I often hear that the management is complaining about the change, and also about the employees that are reluctant to change. And what they're saying is they tried everything, but people are still reluctant to change or refuse to adopt new workflows. You kind of oversee the digital transformation in your company, Nove KBM. And what do you have to say about that? Is that yours or shared responsibility?
Well, it's absolutely shared. I think any transformational project is all about motivating large numbers of people. And we used the Japanese technique when we did our business transformation called Hoshin Kanri, which literally means marching to the beat of one drum. So really it's about moving everyone. You know, CEO, everybody knows you don't actually do any real work, but you do have to set the vision, try to set the structure and inspire people. So that's exactly the same approach we also took with the sustainability agenda. So, you know, we first incorporated it into our strategy. We had a revamp of our strategy back in 2021, and then we made it much more detailed and focused in 2022. So we're now beyond just forward-looking principles or vision. We have a detailed action plan that we track very religiously. We have over 500 actions running at a time. So you know you can't do that with one person, 10 person, or even 500. You need literally thousands. And we work to really build awareness and engagement across the entire bank. So now this year, the ESG agenda is part of our scorecard that every single employee has. So when we evaluate their performance and obviously talk bonus at the end of the year, we look at, did we as a group achieve the ESG targets, and did the individual achieve their portion of those? So that's extremely important to get engagement. You have to track, measure, and also put skin in the game and live people financial upside if they do what they say they will.
So what kind of what is the evaluation like when you evaluate your employees? How does that look like?
Well, we have an ESG set of targets. For me, that's I think 10% of my total score. The other stuff is on financial, but even beyond that, I would argue a lot of the other parts of the scorecard are S&G, because we also track client satisfaction and also employee engagement. So these are part of the culture component. So if you add it up, I think you can argue 25 or 30% of my points on the scorecard are around ESG. For different levels, there are different weightages depending on how much people will have to work on the ESG component. But for some people, it might be 100%. Some people, it might be 10 or 20%. But it's basically some component of everybody's scorecard. And we, you know, part of the culture you need to create for a transformative agenda is having actually solid performance management in the first place. I talked about meritocracy, but what it means is you have clear written goals, you have tracking every month on the KPIs that matter, so people know how they're doing. We just had mid-year reviews, and at the end of the year, we have full-year reviews. So those are written, and they go into details about how we're performing, about business objectives, including the ESG ones. So, you know, I conducted all the discussions with all my direct teammates, and I weighed into many more where, you know, we think we're off track, then we reset targets to make them, you know, more approachable. But I would tell you on ESG or on corporate North Star KPIs, we actually never lower the targets. We only raise them. If we're way ahead, we'll raise the target. You know, but it's important that as a business, you also have set the resources you need. You know, now ESG isn't so much about theory anymore. you need to look at your IT agenda. Is it on the IT demand list? Do individuals who have ESG goals, have resources to achieve them? They have people, they have funds, they have it in their budget. So this is how you can see you're on track, as if those things are advancing.
Yes. I would probably say that there are also some cultural changes, and you said something, you mentioned the Japanese concept. Did that help you with your experience when you entered Slovenia? I understand you were at first slightly reluctant to come here, but you stayed here. Was that obviously challenging, right?
Well, okay, the approach, there was never any question. I've always used a similar technique where you have a clear vision. That's a 3 to 5 year strategic plan. And what I think makes us unique, or maybe not, versus some good companies, is that you have to quantify the vision. So we said, just to give you one example, on client satisfaction, we were in the bottom quartile, and our goal was to obviously be in the top quartile. So if you set then those goals on measuring it, it's usually net promoter score, and we look at ENPS, and we also look at a few other satisfaction indexes. We've seen, a huge change in those each and every single time we measure it. So, but behind it, there's a lot of activity, actions, product redesign, digital capabilities are things clients are interested in. So you have to have a strategy to achieve the vision behind the actual ambition. And that's where, again, similar for ESG, if you know where you want to be, we want to be ultimately one day carbon neutral. But importantly for us as a bank, we are a key driver for the clients we serve. So the so-called level 3 emissions are the challenging ones. So this is why we changed key processes like our credit underwriting process. We don't give any loans to corporates now without an ESG self-assessment. And we only use self-assessment data because there aren't always objective market data in place. So where we can get data about a company's carbon emissions from Bloomberg or some of these other type of companies, we will buy those, and we will enhance that with what the company's agenda is. But the price of the loan you get, the access to the capital or the loan itself, depends on whether you have a transformative ESG agenda in place. And this is what increasingly all the banks are being expected to do by the ECB. And it's not only required of us by regulation, but it's also the kind of business we want to be leading. So, we're personally motivated to do this. And a lot of the companies are quite appreciative of it because they themselves in the different sectors, you might be in construction or transportation or IT business, but all of the regulators in these sectors at different speeds are also expecting transformative agenda. As we as the Slovene economy are trying to hit the country's committed CUP targets, we all have to align in this. So this is where I admit there's a lot more to do than has been done, but the momentum is gaining. And you see for sure in the last 12 months, much more progress than I think got made in the last 10 years. So it's still beginning of a journey. It's like climbing Everest. You have to start with the first step, but you can't get daunted by the immensity of the mountain before you. You just have to go one step at a time. But you start to plan your journey, then you start to have, the details, who's going to carry what, who's going to cook what tents are we going to sleep in. And this is my analogy for the action planning phase. And then, you start to measure progress. If you measure, you typically see progress because people know what you as a board member or what you as a management board stand for. So when people know very clearly there's 12 KPIs you focus on, and we have another 14 ESG KPIs, very transparent for people what's important.
Just give me one KPI. What's the first KPI that you can think of?
Well, okay, if I think about the bank itself, this is the level 1 view of ESG. We took a goal to reduce our carbon between 7 and 10% each year. And we, in the initial years, it was easier. We got 20 to 25% leverage, but it gets harder. So, ultimately, to be at carbon neutral, we're going to have to produce our own electricity from energy efficient sources. But we took a lot of the, let's say, the easier investments first, like changing, insulation, changing LED lights, changing some of the infrastructural. So if we spread this investment out over a few years, it's not so daunting. And anyway, a lot of it can be amortized over a 10-year period. So this is why we say you start investing gradually. And we do have buy-in from our shareholders, our owners, to do this. But to get to zero is a big challenge. I don't think there's a lot of companies that are there yet. And you have to remember, a bank, it's relatively easy because we don't produce steel, we don't produce,
Yes.
components, so it's just more or less a service business. But if you think about Bancanet or the mobile Bancanet, everything runs on electricity. So if you look at level 2 emissions, what we consume as a bank, this is the more challenging part, and it does come down to energy and transforming at least what you can. I think our initial idea was, let's define the starting point, let's measure, and let's expect
Yes.
gradual improvement. I don't think in 1 or 2 years we can achieve a goal like that, but I think over the long term it's very feasible. And by the way, this challenge is similar and will be faced by every other company as soon as the regulators and the policies start to expect that. The way I think of ESG on the climate side, your carbon output is going to be like a tax in the future. So it's pretty hard to get away from paying taxes, and the rules are very sophisticated and advanced when you think about tax. It's clear what you pay what rate on, but in the ESG space, it's not yet. So that's why I think 2 things are going to be required. One is a massive mindset change for companies, the management and their employees, to change their habits, to change their ambition levels, but also the regulators and the lawmakers have a big role to play to get that level playing field across countries. I tell people often, even if Slovenia makes it, which is relatively easier than, let's say, the whole of Europe, it doesn't help us because we are still part of a bigger ecosystem. So we really need to get this cross-border mindset also working more effectively. And I do see positive signs through the COP negotiations and agreements. But like I said, it's still the beginning of a long journey. It's going to be 2040 or 2050 before we really see, did we make it?
Yeah, and we keep missing. Yes, absolutely, I agree. I think we also need a T-shirt that says "Change is hard, but no change is harder." You talk a lot about the change, and I wonder now, the banks and the business of banking is changing. What about the customer, your clients? I mean, what do you see they're shifting as well as you are?
Well, they have to, and they demand it, and also, if you make good change possible for clients, they actually help you adopt it. One of the old analogies I learned back at university was, this market for the Walkman, the old Sony Walkman. It was the original, iPod kind of thing. There was never any market research which showed clients wanted that until it got developed, and then clients realized it was a great way to hear music. So that's where you can lead the adoption curve. And our client base, if you look at it, especially over time, it's changed. When I first got to Slovenia at NKBM, we had 75% of all the transactions were on what I call digital platform, meaning they were on ATMs or they were on Bancanet or they were on, self-service type of channels like AVR. Yeah. Now that figure is above 98%. So the digital adoption and, people basically, they don't want to go to a branch, and it's great if they don't, because you can do almost everything from home. As we've proved through the last 2 years, the world really changed. And I think that's probably the silver lining of the pandemic has been everything we told our staff was true. We said, we will not force everybody to move from Maribor to Ljubljana or Ljubljana to Maribor as we went through various mergers. So people may know we brought together 5 banks in the last 4 years on one single platform. What people don't know is we did it working from home. We had, at the time, we did many of the heavy lifting projects, almost complete lockdown, or at least people working from home, and once the lockdowns were finished. So there were key moments when we had people on site, but by and large, we did 95% of all the work from home. So it shows you don't need to physically be together. But I still am a manager who would caveat that saying we very much value our face-to-face time. So we are now working, 3 days in the office and 2 days at home. And I think this is a good balance because we stress that teams need to meet together, have team meetings face-to-face ideally, but also most of our internal, resources, like you can think about HR or you can think about legal, they still have internal clients. So you need to engage at times with your internal clients. And, we all know the biggest conflicts in a bank or in a company, they're best solved over a beer. People can't just send nasty emails or get, shout on the phone. You have to get together. And then immediately when you see eye to eye, you can have a great chat. And I think when you have that rapport and trust built, then working from home or working on tools like we're on today feels like almost we're in the same room. But you need that relationship and trust building time. And that's why we do a lot of team building, including very fun stuff. We've done cooking, we've done rafting, we've done, climbing, we've done biking, we've done everything we can think of. But we always have one rule: we set the bar higher. So it has to be more fun, more engaging, and also useful professionally.
Oh, nice.
So our team buildings, I can tell you, are a blast at NKBM.
You're also trying some great ideas at us with the team buildings ideas. So what was the best team building? Where was that, or what was that? Did you try jumping from planes with the parachutes? Maybe is that a good idea?
I'm a certified skydiver, but I haven't forced my B1 managers to do it because a couple of the people are a little bit afraid of heights. But we have done cliff diving on the Socha. And of course it's voluntary, but there's a little peer pressure involved. Maybe off record, I would tell you, we got all of our managers to jump. And this is, for some people maybe easier, for some people harder. But it's hard to say what was the coolest one. I remember when we were bringing together Abanca and NKBM managers right after the merger was announced. You had two sets of teams. They were in some ways competing for the same roles. So we wanted people to understand everybody was working for the same client. So we did one thing: we did barbecuing, we did Socha river rafting. We had some high water and some white water going, and we did a lot of activities where you have to trust somebody. So, I'm a big believer in symbolism. So, the team asked me if we're going to do cooking, we're going to have aprons as a gift. And they said, "Do you want red or green?" I said, "I want both. It should be 50-50 because we want an inclusive culture. And I want especially the Abanca people to feel welcome, because it could feel like a hostile takeover if we don't." And I remember my team told me it was impossible. We can't produce red and green aprons. So we actually got out the scissors and we cut them. So now we had one half was red and one half was green, and I made the team sew them together. So nothing's impossible. You just have to find the right way to do it. And this symbol became a cool party favor, if you will. But I still wear proudly my red and green, apron every time I barbecue now at home. So, you have to have this inclusiveness, and you have to use powerful symbols. And you saw also how our NKBM brand, it's a 160-year-old brand. It was always red, but we changed the red a little bit to make it more dynamic. And you can see in the visual behind me, we included this Abanca arrow because we want people to feel welcome and included. And this is extremely important that, the way the Romans acquired colonies, if you include people, you let them see the upside, they have financial or developmental skin in the game, then people get on the bandwagon and get excited about it. And I think it's gone extremely well from a transformation standpoint, but also our voice of the employee. That's one of those other North Star KPIs we track. It's gone also from hugely negative scores to hugely positive scores in just a couple of years because of the approach, I think, more than anything.
Yes. Red and green, that looks like Portuguese flag to me, and
it's a bit Christmas, but we tried to make it work. I know it's not the most natural colors, but I think there's some beauty in it because it stands out.
Yeah, I think that's marvelous today, and I think, well, maybe people listening can this is a great chance to level up your team building ideas, or maybe talk to John just about that. And yeah, there's full of symbolism there. I have several titles, and one of them, as Barbara I think mentioned in the beginning, is also I'm a bicycle mayor of Ljubljana. It's a very informal. I don't get paid, but I do get to talk about the future mobilities. And you talked about ESG measures as a part of your strategy. How do you address the questions of mobility?
Well, yeah, mobility is part of our ESG agenda. So, we're in the process of transforming our fleet to an electric fleet. But, we study it, and you see that the fuel consumption the bank has, because we're not a transport company, it's only about 2% of our ESG footprint. So we do that more for symbolic reasons. And I think, gradually we will get close to 100% of our fleet will be E. But again, the symbolism is important, and that's why we also did something. I'm a big cyclist fan myself, but there was an old Abanca program where they had bikes out in front of the bank. There's 10 bikes that staff can just take and ride around. And I realized it's a great marketing opportunity because you see these bikes parked everywhere in front of even NLB, or you see them parked in front of SKB, or you see them parked in front of municipality building, and it's like a free billboard. It moves and it's visual and everybody sees it. So we expanded this program also to Maribor and Tesno, and really encourage our staff to use these free bikes, you know, when they ride around. And I think staff now, they like it if they're cycling. I think people who need a little bit of help with fitness, they're asking for e-bikes now. So we'll see whether we invest in that as a next step.
We saw a slide, and can I ask Barbara to show it again? Because there's you said you're a cyclist, and I'm not surprised. And before we see the slide, I have a question. Do you have a friend that doesn't know that you're a cyclist? Because usually everybody who cycles talks about it a lot. So I think that's theoretically impossible, but maybe surprised me.
But sorry, I didn't quite catch the question. It's what?
So I was asking whether you've got a friend or someone close in your staff, in your team, that doesn't know that you're cycling.
That doesn't know?
Yeah.
No, everybody knows because, you know, I live in Ljubljana and Maribor both, and I have cycles in both places. So I think it will be more challenging to catch me in a car than on a bicycle. And I think that's great. You know, it happens to fit our clean environment or our healthy living positioning, but, you know, just fun. I mean, I love biking, and I know you're the same way, but it's just a lifestyle choice you make.
Yeah, I'm thinking, well, maybe we've met on road, but I don't know, like, how do you look like on a bicycle? And
well, you won't meet me so much on the road as more off-road. So, well, you know, okay, if you blink, you miss it, you know?
Yeah.
But you typically see me wearing, I had some bike jerseys from NKBM Red. I also have some old green Abanca ones, or, you know, we work with Primož Roglič, so I've got some of his branding on nowadays. But whatever's clean in the laundry pile.
Yeah, but what color is your helmet?
Well, gold. I got it here.
Oh my God! Great. I have mine as well. So
really?
Yeah, look.
Funny.
So
that's a roadie helmet. Looks like a roadie helmet. Mine's off-road.
It is a roading helmet. Yeah. Great. So I wanted to ask, so you're more of an off-road cyclist. Barbara, can we see the slide again? Are you more of an off-road or road cyclist?
Well, I have both, but I honestly train on the road only when I have to, because I'm a little intimidated by the cars. I think it's less safe. And I feel in the mountains, it's a little easier. If I hit a tree, it's my own fault, and the tree's not going to run you over. But I do like both. I'm doing triathlon, so you need to be on a road bike too. And, you know, I try to force the ideal training is, as you know, is doing both, right? You need a road and for the intensity and continuity, and you need the mountain for this forces on the hills, right? So the ideal training is both.
And how many? So we.
Sorry, guys. Do you see my screen now?
Yeah, we do see it. Thank you, Barbara. Can you show us the first slide? I wanted to ask John a little bit about the power that the cyclist produce. So a professional cyclist can produce 1,000 watts of power in his peaks, and the amateur is 300. So I was asking you, what type of a cyclist are you in terms of watts? Where would you be? I'm asking you about your FTP, obviously.
Well, I never measured the watts. I know some of the gyms have that, and that's it's a good way to train when everybody can really see who's got which intensity, you know. But look, I'm probably not going to win any gold medals anymore. I'm just doing it to participate and stay fit. So my goal is to maybe do a competition or two every year, and that serves more as a training goal to keep active all year, especially, you know, these winter months are ahead of us, so it gets a little hard to get out there when it's raining or snowing, but you got to.
Yeah, but I'm sure you're also competitive when it gets to cycling. I mean, what was your last race and who did you beat?
Well, for cycling, I was in the Bled Triathlon, and, you know, I was probably toward end of the pack. That's a pretty competitive group. So my goal is just to stay ahead of my friends, you know. Bragging rights are everything, and the rest is just for fun. So
yeah. Barbara, let's see the other slide. It's got some statistics of cycling. And so, well, a lot of kilometers cycling in Slovenia, and 44% of people use it in their free time. So do you track your kilometers in a year? How much of the kilometers that we see here is yours? What's
Well, I got a new watch now, so I started trekking, but I have no idea how many kilometers I did this year. I think if I trek usually what do they call it, saddle time. So if I can do in a week between 3 and 5 hours, that's good for me. That usually means 2 or 3 rides. I was probably a little below that the last 6 months, and I was probably doing better a year back. And you see that in the speed, right, when you start to race. But anyway, if I could, my goal would be this year, I'd like to do 5 or 6 hours saddle time.
Okay. I'm a little bit surprised that you're not very strict about the KPIs of cycling, but at the same time, I understand that because it's a pastime. It's not your job. It's like you enjoy cycling, right?
Yeah, but I do log every ride, so I can go back and measure it, and I just know I just need to go out more. If I, at least for a beginner like me, if you put in the hours, then you'll see the result on race day. So it's not for me about doing yet intervals or some of the, like if you talk about Roglic, I think the training program is quite sophisticated. For me, it's just but hours on saddle. That's all I need.
You mentioned Primož, and this also reminds me of your close relationship you have with Primož Roglic. And also 2 weeks ago, I think you hold a cycling race, a charity race. So my first question, how did that go?
Well, it was, unfortunately, I had to miss what was the coolest event of the year, because for me, cycling already ranks highly. And then, in a country like Slovenia, you have a chance to rub shoulders with one of the greatest in the whole world. And it's not just Primož. You have Tadej, you have Mohoric, you have all kinds of amazing cyclists around. So I talk a lot about the golden era of cycling in Slovenia. So if you haven't started biking, it's your biggest chance ever. But it was actually, I was surprised to learn it was Primož's first ride with clients together, not just in Slovenia, but anywhere. So he's, I think, been very focused on his training and his required discipline for his racing goals. So I had the great joy to bring our clients, especially many of our premium and strategic partners, we brought together with Primož, and by the way, and Laura. So we use both of them as ambassadors for our brand. They stand for healthy living, hard training and discipline, obviously teamwork. And that's why Laura is an equal partner. We use her a lot in our visuals. You'll see her also on some of our upcoming TV commercials as a key figure, because we know it's a lot about family and it's a lot about trust in each other, not just about, your racing star. So we purposely wanted to sponsor both. And I honestly think that's why Primož wanted to work with us, because he saw our concept was a little bit different than just showing gold medals. It was showing about the journey, which is applicable. But we had, at this event, back to your question, we had 250 cyclists, and it was purposely done in Maribor, Patui, and back. So some of the faster cyclists had a chance to test their legs on the hills with Primož, but obviously they went at a speed where our average client, especially City Gold clients, they're maybe a little more wealthy and a little more overweight, but everybody there was keen, avid cyclists, and it was a once of a lifetime event. I had COVID at the time, so sadly I had to miss it, and I was really bummed. I was nearly in tears, but we're planning to do another one next year, where you can be sure I won't miss it.
I'll be there as well, John.
Great.
So I also noticed, you said it's about family. I also like, the ad you're talking about is really urban cycling. It's also an important aspect of cycling. And of course, this really, but you mentioned, are you preparing a new ad or?
Well, yeah, we worked with Primož and Laura for the last 2 years, and we extended our contract now for the next several. And we are filming, we just finished filming new television spots, which will be on air soon. So I don't want to spoil the surprises, but I think the ads are very creative and very funny. And obviously they have to do with cycling and ESG. So you'll see a lot of elements of the bicycle and the positioning we want around ESG, but you'll also see Primož and Laura bringing together this teamwork aspect, this family aspect, and this mutual trust. If you don't trust your bank, then there's a problem for you and for the bank. So we want to, be the bank that's worthy of trust. And this is why I think those are two individuals who are amazing choice of ambassadors for what we're trying to stand for. And they're not the only ones. We work with many other top athletes and teams around the country.
Yes.
And also outside the athletic space, we work with many artists or community or charity angles as well. So this is extremely important, how you see yourself in the community. And at the end of the day, that's the S of the ESG, right?
Yeah.
That social part has a very rich history at NKBM, and we want to continue it.
Now that you mention it, I can't wait to see it. Now it's kind of like it's kind of like the premiere of a new show on Netflix, but it'll be an ad of a Nove KBM. So when will that be out?
I think November or latest December should be out already.
And it has been filmed.
Yeah.
And do you mind telling me, how did this relationship with Primož really start? I mean,
well, I think it was a brainstorming. I probably have to give the credit to my marketing head. But our board very quickly adapted to the idea of, approaching Primož. So it was our idea. We approached him and via his manager, and then we talked about, I think, what our vision was and how we thought we could use them. And like I said, I think they liked our vision because it fit very much with their values. In the end, we have very common values, high performance, training,
yes.
That the journey ahead is not going to be easy. So you have to be disciplined, and increasingly it's healthy living in green environment. So it's a perfect fit, really. And like I said, I felt really privileged that the couple honestly chose us, not the other way around. They could work with anybody they want, but we were the lucky ones.
Yeah, maybe, I mean, that's a great chance. I mean, we have 3 cycling shirts, so whoever is close to cycling, he or she should ask a question in the chat. There's a chat button, or questions. We have 2. Yeah, we do have 2 questions actually already. So yeah, I was also expecting some questions about the cycling, maybe, now that this is a topic. And I will then kindly ask Barbara to go through the questions. We're not in a hurry just yet. We have some time, John. But this again. So please ask questions, because we will have time for Q&A at the end. And John, like, there's a, I think, do you think Slovenia is a cycling country? I mean, compared to the States, for example.
I would honestly tell you it's one of the reasons I like to live here. So, I told you I'm a mountain biker, and I live on the base of the Pogovarjata or near the Jakob Trail in Ljubljana. So I'm often on those. I was seeing that if you look at the statistics, Slovenia actually ranks #1 in bicycle purchases per capita. So it's 120 for every 1,000 people, which seems like a low number, but it's actually highest in the world. And if you look at another survey I read a while back, Slovenia ranks #7 in terms of the most bike-friendly countries. So I was curious who's #1, and it was Denmark. But I said, man, I wouldn't want to cycle in Denmark. It's totally flat, windy, and boring. And compared to the beautiful nature, especially now in the fall, you see the colors turning. You can't convince me that Denmark is better for cycling than where we sit right now. So it's for sure one of the best cycling paradises in the world. And it was honestly one of the reasons I chose to live here. And honestly, I'm building a house here right near the trail. So, it's the best place for cycling, no question.
John, that's so Slovenian of you. And when you mentioned Denmark, it's true that they don't have hills, but I think they treat wind as hills. So yeah, they say it's kind of the same.
For training value, it might be the same. But you see the cycling is starting to catch on more and more. And we talked about some of the cycling greats in our country. So I think they are for sure inspiring us and the younger generation. If you look at Maribor, I noticed in the time I've been here over the last 5 years, they laid 500 kilometers of new cycling track, and they're still in the process of expanding it. So you see programs like M-Bike, or a lot of the regions and cities have similar programs. So I think it's the start of what will become one great cycling highway all around the country, because we simply have the nature and the appetite for it. If you look at Slovenes, people who cycle, they typically cycle 2 or 3 times a week. So, you have a very athletic population. We have space and a lot of open nature. And so there's plenty of room for cycling tracks to connect all the big cities. I wish they would do a bicycle highway free of cars for, Maribor, Celje, Ljubljana would be a good start. And then we hook on Koper and go towards Gorica would be ideal. And I think it's just a question of getting the mayors and the investment together to do so. And that's the kind of thing, honestly, we'd be happy to sponsor part of the highway.
Okay, I'm taking notes, John. I'm taking notes.
So if you're the bicycle mayor of Ljubljana, let's figure out who's the bicycle mayor of Slovenia and talk about that.
Yeah. I can also invite you to my bike bus. I have a bike bus every Wednesday morning from Črnuče to the downtown, and my goal is to encourage people to, instead of taking car, they should be taking the bicycle. Barbara, do we have questions already? Do you want to intervene with them? I still have a lot of topics to open, but I'll give you a word if there are questions.
There are questions, yes. The first one comes from Andrei, and he's asking, ESG is also implemented from working from home, and if it is, do you provide the tools? Which and how? And wow, what a great talk.
Oh, thanks for the feedback. Yes, ESG for me does include working from home. So like I said, we value that employees are in the office. We did purposely decide not to be 100% work from home, but I think there are some companies, especially IT companies, where they, like the kind of people who work, code, can work entirely from home. So we see a balanced approach as important because we're a people business and we're serving clients, and keeping in mind our branches, unfortunately, those people were never allowed to work from home. So if you're a teller or a seller or a branch manager or a corporate relationship manager, you always have to engage clients where they are or in a branch. So we always had a big chunk of our population wants to work from home but cannot. So we're a bit of a hybrid. We do provide tools to people. There's basically pay supplements for setting up your work from home office. And like I said, there was one time during the lockdown, we were almost entirely working from home. The couple of exceptions I said, the branches were still open because banks were deemed critical infrastructure, and people, they need to feel they have access to their money and they need the cash, even though you can do everything today on e-banking or credit card. So you don't actually need cash, but it was, I think, more of a political or a governmental decision that cash itself has to be open. So our cash center had to be open. So you had, armed security guys and the people who fill the ATMs. They were in office, but they're not a big number of people. And then we had a couple of key people who basically keep the electricity running, which otherwise the bankanet wouldn't run. So we can operate, other than those couple of exceptions, entirely from home, and we will do so. When we see the pandemic, for example, increasing, we have the option to pivot and work from home, and we did that, I think, more conservatively than many of the Slovene companies. So yeah, you can get support to work from home. All the IT tools, including subventions, are there.
That's great to hear. Thank you, John. We have another question by Gregor. What do you think about e-bikes, John?
Well, it's funny. I made an appointment to go get one on Friday, tomorrow. So I'm going to Extreme Vital. I got a connection, but it's not for me. It's for my girlfriend, so she can keep up. So I'm too young to need an e-bike, but I'm a huge fan. I know a lot of the hardcore mountain bikers tease and make fun of the e-bikers. And, of course, I'm not ready to ride one exclusively myself, but when you try it, you'll love it because you can make a completely different bike journey. So, a couple of examples, even some bike pros I know, I bike with some guys who are ex-professional racers. They have e-bikes, not because they need them or they're not fit, but because they're trying to ride up the hills that are only downhill rideable otherwise. And if you try that, you realize it's a killer workout going on an e-bike up a huge incline. So anyway, I'm going to get my first e-bike hopefully Friday. And that way my Melita can keep up with me on the bike, which has been a sore spot because she's just not training enough to ride with the group. But when we tried it recently on rental e-bike, she loved it. She totally fell in love. So for those of you who maybe aren't yet cycling and you have a little bit of fears, try an e-bike. There's nothing wrong with it other than there's a little bit of a stigma among the hardcore, maybe teasing you. But it's the same if you drink craft beer or you're vegan, people will tease you, but it doesn't mean it's the wrong thing to do.
Great. Well, that's it for now. So maybe you can, continue with your discussion.
Yeah, well, definitely. We need at least one more questions. Otherwise, I'll take the third.
Otherwise, we keep the shirt, right?
Yeah.
Matej,
Yeah.
we keep the shirt.
Yeah,
We'll fight for it.
you mentioned the Denmark, and probably Netherlands is the second most cycling friendly. And in Dutch, they have a saying. It says, "Een fiets is iets, maar bijna niets," and it means that the bicycle is something, but also almost nothing. And I will try to elaborate. It basically says it compares. It talks about the simplicity of a bicycle, that it is not as complex as a car, for example. It's a very simple piece of technology, almost nothing. But then again, it's a symbol of change towards more equitable and actually fair use of public space. Do you see where that is coming from?
Well, I like the sentiment, but I would tell you the statement's clearly not true. If you look at the sophistication now of bicycles, my racing bike costs 10,000 euros, so it's more than most people's car. And of course, it's a great luxury to be able to have one of those things. But it's got full suspension, it's got even a radar on the back, it's super lightweight carbon, so it's all the best materials, even down to the wheels and the handlebars. So of course, a bicycle can be simple or complex, but I actually think the technology that's entered into cycling is incredibly interesting because, we talked about digitization is also cool and needed, and it's a way to reduce costs and save the environment. So, the bikes are for sure becoming high tech. And same way, even on road bikes, you have a lot of optionality that you can invest in or not. But you can have a simple bike or a sophisticated bike. But I wouldn't agree that it's nothing. It's a big check.
Well, yeah, I mean, the Dutch meant, what they use as a bicycle in the cities to get you from point A to point B usually produces sound, as like crackling, and it's like just, I think that was their idea. But you're right. So you say you have a 10,000 euros bike. I think that must be a mountain bike, right? Full suspension. What is your cheapest bicycle?
Well, I have also probably a 20 euro variant, which is the one you can leave in front of Spar and you don't have to lock it up. So, I actually have 7 bikes I counted. 1 spin bike, a couple mountain bikes, 1 road bike, and 1 commuter bike. So, and like I said, I'm in the market for an e-bike now, so maybe the number will be 8. So now the reason I need to build a house. I need a place to keep my bicycles.
Oh yeah, and then the garage will be a place for bicycles, not
Yeah, I'm
cars.
designing a super secure and custom-made garage with bike hangers. So it's a bit like you probably have your suits and ties, right? Like a ladies probably have their drawers for many shoes. So I have something for my bicycles on the wall in the basement where it's out of the living room too.
Yeah. So talk about your 20 euros bike a little bit more. Like when did you last time? When was the last time you used it?
Well, it's in the basement. Last time I commuted, it's been a while, only because I walk everywhere. Maribor or Ljubljana. By choice, I live in the center. So if I ride bike, I take one of the NKBM bikes because it's from office to meeting. So, that's the one I have free access to that I maybe ride the most. But when I'm on my time, it's probably usually the expensive one on the hill.
Like, it's great. I'm so glad that you mentioned walking, because walking is also a part of sustainable mobility. We forgot about that already, and it's great to see that. Well, cities like Maribor and Ljubljana and Celje and Novo Mesto and whatnot are all really walkable. It is. So, do you know, like, your colleagues from other banks, are they like you, or I think like you probably set an example, don't you?
I don't know. Colleagues from other banks, those are competitors, so I don't consider them colleagues.
Oh
But
yeah,
of
okay.
course, in Slovenia, we all know each other and we have a beer and a laugh. So of course, we're friends too. And I believe you can be fierce competitors and still friends with somebody. You have to have different faces, but when it's game time, it's game time.
Yeah.
But of course, I think a lot of my peers I see also similar, because everybody is acknowledging that transformation topics like ESG are important, and I think they all lead by good examples if you look at many of the individuals that we're talking about. So we have a competition, but it is a friendly one in many ways.
Yeah, you said that you're not so competitive, but the best idea is to beat your friends, or then in this case your peers. I think That also makes sense. Well, there's so many ideas that you mentioned that I really like. I mean, you can rent a bike at Nove KBM, and you know, I would like to introduce another fancy word. It's a modal split. It comes from the language of traffic engineers, and it allows what means of transport people use. And so, do you maybe know the modal split of people working at Nove KBM? So I learned they work 2 days from home. That's already not using transport at all. So what percentage of people that come to work to Nove KBM use bicycles? Do you know that?
Well, we don't actually capture that data,
Of course.
but I know anecdotally there was a European auto free day recently where I saw 5% of our staff participated, and they actually logged that information for 1 day. So we saw combined those 5% did 500 kilometers cycling, walking, or doing other stuff than driving. But I think that percentage shows you most people are still driving, and they're still very tied and dependent on their cars. So I think the upside to change behaviors is tremendous, especially for people who live in the center. You know, you have to commute. There's no way to avoid at some point getting in a car or getting on an airplane. Otherwise, you're just going to be locked in your basement. But I think you can change habits gradually so that the numbers and the impacts are meaningful. And again, you know, the main reason for cycling maybe isn't the environment. It's just fun. It's good exercise. It's good for your body. So, you know.
I'm so glad you mentioned it. It's also a social life. I mean, you meet people, and you also meet people that you don't know. Maybe you talk to someone that you meet for the first time. What about your walking experience? So can you just describe me, like, you're in Maribor and then you walk from your house to the what happens on that route? I mean, I don't know how far from your job, from your
I by choice like to live in the center because I want to be part of the downtown. So in Maribor, I'm about 2 blocks away from the bank, and in Ljubljana, I sit right between the Exa Banka and the SKB. So by choice, I'm right in the center. And you know what happens? Well, I try to save my free time for quality time. So I don't want to be stuck in a traffic jam anyway. That's why I keep 2 apartments, because I don't want to be always having to commute back to Maribor or Ljubljana, depending on whichever. So I pick 2 households in the centers, and I leverage that. I want to be present in both places. You know, our bank is very clearly a national bank, not just a regional player anymore. So that's why the symbolism and the presence is important. You got to show skin time or show face there. But yeah, my commute home, I get to stop in. The dangerous problem is there's many pubs on the way home. So if you're walking down Ljubljana, you have to cross, 3 bridges, or you have to go past Pošna Street. So I have time to meet a friend for coffee or beer. That's the quality time I'm talking about. Or you can ride bike, or you can go to the gym. You don't want to be stuck in traffic jam. It's the worst thing. And I remember earlier in my career, I was at Citigroup for many, many years, and I covered regions. So I had to fly 2 or 3 times a week. I was often 3 nights gone. So I really missed that quality time. And I spent many times Friday evening, I should have been home already, stuck at an airport because there was a blizzard or a storm going. So, for me, the privilege to live in a country like this where I don't have to travel across borders a whole lot. I can walk to work. I can enjoy the beautiful nature and the beautiful people and wine. This is why I love it here. It's simple. It's quality of life.
Remind me again, what was the biggest city you lived in?
Well, I've been in 30 years. I think I lived in 16 different places. So I move every 3 years on average my whole career. I was in dirty, polluted places like Karachi, which, by the way, was amazing in the sense of meeting people. But I lived everywhere: London, Spain, Turkey, Czech, Poland, Hungary, Singapore. I probably forgot a couple, but yeah, it's been a lot.
And
This
never
is the
did you.
smallest. If you take Ljubljana and Maribor combined, that's the smallest city I ever lived. You can take all Slovenia. It's the smallest city I probably ever lived in.
That's a great title. Slovenia is the smallest city I lived in. And you decided to build a house in Slovenia. This has never happened before, right?
Well, I never owned a house anywhere, but I like the country enough, voting with your feet, right? I want to put down a foothold just because whether I keep working here continuously or I maybe even go and come back, I want to at least retire here because I like the nature. And, there's no coincidence I'm building right on Pogovarjata, which is the best mountain biking hill in Maribor. So that's where I hope to be.
Yeah, yeah. It also used to be a ski ground, but that's changing due to the climate change, and these are also the issues that we are all addressing with sustainable measures and KPI.
Yeah, you can see a couple of the ramifications of climate change for those of us who love nature. You know, one is I was on Triglav. I had the privilege to climb Triglav, but you can see the glacier is receding, and that was really the point of climbing, was to see this visual representation of pollution or carbon. And you know, the other one, I'm a scuba diver, so I was diving now for more than 25 years, and some of the best reefs I used to dive on, they're dead now. They're completely white or barren. So this is where you realize this isn't just talk, you know, this stuff is measurable and you can feel it in your bones when you just look around.
All right. You're also a scuba diver. All right. John, thank you. Barbara, we will now go to the questions. If there is another question.
There's just one more question, and
Yes.
this is, beside implemented sustainability strategy in the bank, do you have any sustainability initiatives for your employees?
Sustainability for employees, we have many. We have a culture and what we call the Voice of Employee program. It had over 100 different action items in it, and we measure whether it's working by taking twice a year a Voice of the Employee survey. So, you know, when you ask Voice of the Employee, it's simply asking people on a scale from 1 to 10, do you see your future, and, you know, do you want to keep working at our bank? So we only count you as a promoter if you vote with a 9 or a 10.
Oh.
And even a score as high as 8, it counts 0. So +1 is a 9 or a 10, 0 is a 7 or 8, just like NPS, and anything below that we consider a detractor. So we know our strategy is working because all these aspects are important. So, you know, we look at it very carefully. It's important that management doesn't just take survey, but you have to act on the survey. So we've done a lot of things around compensation, especially training and development, and a lot of it is around simple things you can do like work environment. So in these different categories, we have an action plan. We have, you know, over the 5 or 6 years I've been here, implemented almost everything, or at least we're in the process of implementing some of the last things. But there's also new things entering the list from the survey we just did. And I'm proud to say every single quarter we took the survey over 5 years, our score kept going up. But there's still a lot of room to improve to become at par with the best in Europe, and that's what we're aiming for. So for, you know, we went to now almost among the best in Slovenia, almost, we're a little short, but we're gunning for best in Europe and best among financial services in Europe. And if we can achieve that, then I can truly claim we're the best place to work. So I still think there's a lot of work to do, but I'm very proud of the progress that's made and measurable.
That's great to hear. Another question just came in. Sorry, Matej.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying that John is like throwing ideas at us, and I'm really grateful that he's doing that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Barbara.
Okay, Marco's asking a question regarding the bank's core business, retail lending. Does the bank help customers finance their green customer housing investments that have a positive impact on the environment? Do they have special products, or incentives prepared for this purpose?
Okay, this is the first time I'm announcing this to anyone. We are on November 2nd launching our green retail loans. We always have had corporate green loans, and a lot of the financing we give based on the funding we get requires green financing in the corporate space. So, you know, if you're building a dam or a windmill or a, you know, energy efficient factory, we have always done this kind of business. But you're right, in the retail space, in Slovenia, I think all the banks have been lacking, and even some of the green loans you see, they're, I wouldn't say greenwashing necessarily, but I think they're just at the beginning of having the right attributes to be truly contributing to the environment. So we're launching our version of green loan, which is based on the EU taxonomy. So it's all the definitions that we can use to meet reporting requirements of the ECB, but also because, you know, it's actually going to be investing in more sustainable, especially housing, but also purposes like solar panels and stuff. So our product launches on November 2, and you will start to see the campaign on social media from then. So if you're building or looking to build an energy efficient house, you want to build an energy efficient heat pump or solar panels, you will get a better interest rate off of our core products.
Thank you for the announcement, John.
And thanks
Thank
for the
you.
question. I can get better product placement, PR, but you asked, so I had to talk about it.
Great.
Yeah, we asked that. That's exactly right. So, Barbara, if I'm correct, we have 3 winners for the shirts, right? And we're sort
Yes,
of
we do.
running out of time already.
Yeah.
So, who are the lucky?
The lucky winners
Yeah.
are Andrej Lange, Gregor Plantarič in Marko Tretnjak. Tako da hvala vsem za vprašanja in prosim, če ste tako prijazni in mi pošljete še svoje naslove, kamor vam lahko te majčke pošljemo.
Congrats to my friend Marko Tretnjak. He used to work with us, and I know him. He's now at the Consumer Protection people. So I'm glad you're asking about green loans. So now you know.
Thank you, John. Simona, last word from you.
Thank you to being with us, John.
I wanted to, Simona, sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to maybe make a little product placement for you guys. There's a reason why I agreed to come to this MicroCop thing, and it's because also MicroCop helped us a lot on our journey to become paperless branch. So one of the early projects we kicked off was we said we wanted to be a little bit like some of the telcos. Why do we have paper forms? Why do we have to print them and then scan them and then we print them again and archive them in paper format? So we transformed our branch environment to almost, it's not 100%, but it's about 99% paperless, where you go in, you sign on a tablet, you know, your signature is valid legal signature, and the document we store in the cloud is the official contract. So all of our new business is like this. And it was funny, when I first came, we had so much paper, we needed to buy a forklift. And I said, come on, we're a bank. We're not producing newspapers. Why do we have a forklift? And they told me we have a lot of paper. And I asked how much. So they said if we stacked it up, it would be 10 kilometers of paper. So since we sponsor a lot of running events, I said, why don't we have a run around the pile of paper and just burn it as a symbol? But in the meantime, we're only keeping the paper we need to until it expires 10 years after the account closes by law. But all of the new contracts and the branch environment for retail and corporate business, it's almost entirely paperless. And that's thanks to working with Simona. And I remember I negotiated very tough with you guys. We were also trying to cut costs at the time. But in fact, reducing paper became the biggest expense reduction program we had at the time. And now it's just the way we do business. So thanks to you guys also for helping us on our ESG journey before we even called it that.
That's so good to hear.
Thank you, John. I am very glad you told us this. We are glad to helping you.
Yep. Yeah. And I hope maybe next year we get together in person again. I know it's not always fun on Teams, but anyway, it's a little better when we can have some Q&A together and drink a beer, all of us together. So look forward to having a drink with you all.
Yes, look forward
and maybe have a ride, should I add. Well, thank you, everybody. It was a pleasure talking to you, John, and thank you for all of the great ideas, and also thank you to the audience for asking questions, and Simona and Barbara for being a great host. That's all from me. Barbara, is there anything left we forgot to say?
Ja, jaz bi samo še se zahvalila v imenu celotne ekipe MicroCop vsem obiskovalcem današnjim. Prosim vas, da na koncu srečanja pustite povratno informacijo, kako se vam je zdel dogodek, in vaše informacije nam bodo pomagale potem naprej pri pripravi dogodkov v prihodnje. Vsekakor vas vabim že na naslednji naš spletni seminar, ki ga imamo novembra, na katerem bomo predstavili IndoCatch Office. Upamo, da ste izvedeli marsikaj novega na letošnjem DigiMeetu. Precej izkušenj smo vam predstavili, naših strank, naših gostov, in morda je to bila tudi priložnost, da zveste nekaj, kar vam bo pomagalo pri vaši digitalizaciji vnaprej. Tako da zahvaljujem se vsem skupaj. Thank you, John, again. And se vidimo kmalu spet. Lepo se imejte. Adijo.
Adijo, nasvidenje.
Adijo.